we know that New Zealand is getting the best out of this kind of science funding.
I call the honourable member Nikki Kay.
Mr Chair, I'm very pleased to speak on the ATI bill, as has already been acknowledged by the Minister. Obviously, we acknowledge the late Sir Paul Callaghan and the fact that we're calling it the Callaghan innovation. Can I just make a couple of points? Firstly, I want to say it is pleasing that many parties across this House support this bill. I'm disappointed that the Green Party are not supporting the bill, but I want to say that through the Select Committee there was some constructive engagement, and I know that it was under tight timeframes, but we did a range of things to rectify that. And I just want to address 3 or 4 points that Grant Robertson has made. The first point that Mr Robertson made with regard to Part 2 was around RS&T providers. And I just want to point Mr Robertson to a couple of key clauses in the bill. One is around the interpretation section. In my view, and we expressed this in the commentary, that it clearly does cover the tertiary sector. We didn't feel we needed to be more prescriptive. It's not only set out in the interpretation, but it's also covered off in our commentary. So any sort of questions that this doesn't cover the tertiary sector, in my view, clearly don't look at the key clauses in the bill that address this. The second point that Mr Robertson made was that there needed to be greater collaboration. Well, you know what? We actually agreed with that during the Select Committee process. And one of the key changes that we made as a result of some very powerful submissions from organisations like KiwiNet, we actually inserted an additional reference in, I think it's 14, in clause 14, to be clear that we understand the point that the Minister's made as well, that it's really important that we're not unnecessarily replicating the good work that is happening out there in the sector, and that is right across business and also the research organisations. So a key part of the significant changes that we made at Select Committee was to recognise and put a duty on Callaghan Innovation that there was going to be collaboration. The other key point that I want to address that hasn't been discussed yet, but is, in my view, part of this discussion about the objectives and the purpose of Callaghan Innovation. And that is to say, as Mr Robertson mentioned, there is a transfer of people and there is a supporting aspect in terms of bringing key people as part of our innovation sector together. But there is also an overall discussion that the Select Committee had about the question of what was originally in the bill called net benefit for New Zealand, and which we ended up, I think, reverting back to benefit to New Zealand. And I want to just touch on that briefly, because we had what was quite a long discussion. And I think it is important in the context of the other objectives, because there were a lot of questions that were raised around the research capability. We were very clear again, as the Minister has mentioned, that the Establishment Board has quite a lot of work to do, and I think he has said to Tracy Martin today that it is important to make sure that that line falls in the right place. But there was this discussion about net benefit. And we actually decided to remove that term net from the clause, so that because in our view we believe that the benefit test encapsulated a wide range of benefits for New Zealand, but also it aligns the ATI with other entities such as Crown Research Institutes. The other point that Mr Robertson made was around the funding issue. And I think that in 12, 13, 14, it's actually very clearly set out the fact that there is a wide discretion there in terms of the Callaghan Innovation, which gives the ability via the Establishment Board to have that flexibility, because as I've said previously in debates, technology is changing rapidly, relationships will change in the future. We know that from inquiries like digital literacy that we have before our Education and Science Select Committee. But I just want to touch on that issue of funding, because I do believe that our government has a very good record in terms of the issue of science funding. In budget 2012 we delivered 250 million of new operating funding. I think towards the ATI, the Callaghan Innovation, 166 million. It reflects our belief that I think we're now spending 1.24 billion, which is a 17% increase. That is incredibly important in very difficult fiscal times. And I think that is important when we discuss that issue of the allocation of funding, because I think that was something that did come to our Select Committee. That's why we decided in the commentary to issue a very lengthy commentary on issues that weren't necessarily legislative, but were around operational issues. And I would refer anyone who is listening to the section that we added around internal research capability and research funding, where we actually outlined the issues that came to the Select Committee. In my view, we didn't have to do that, but we did that because we wanted to send a message which was that the Select Committee understood the issues out there around funding. So in my view, Mr. Chair, the issues that Mr Robertson have raised were all very thoroughly canvassed during the Select Committee. RS&T providers clearly includes the tertiary sector. The issue of collaboration was strengthened in the bill. In terms of the issue of the overall benefit to New Zealand, again, the purpose must be taken into account in terms of the overall benefit to New Zealand, but also on the issue that Tracy Martin has raised, we went to extreme lengths during the Select Committee process to canvass these issues, at least in the commentary. So, Mr Chair, I think this is going to be a very important bill for New Zealand.
I call the Honourable Member David Clendon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Kia ora. I'm very pleased to take a call on this, not least of all because the Minister